Hello and welcome to Uzreport World News. My name is Barnona Zarzoda. December the 8th commemorates the Constitution Day of Uzbekistan. It is on this day in 1992 the main law of the country was adopted. It replaced the Constitution of 1978. When developing the draft constitution, the world practice of constitutional development was studied. The success achieved in the world in the field of human rights, democracy and legislation were taken into account. On September 26, 1992, the draft constitution of the Republic of Uzbekistan was published in the press for nationwide discussion. The discussion lasted about 2 months. The draft, with corrections made on the basis of suggestions made during the discussion, was published in the press on November 26, 1992. During the nationwide discussion, more than 6,000 proposals were submitted, which were accepted by the Commission for consideration. S&P Global Ratings affirmed its long and short-term foreign and local currency ratings on Uzbekistan at BB-/B. The outlook remains negative. See the details in our next report.
The negative outlook reflects our view that Uzbekistan's external and fiscal debt could continue to increase rapidly, the organization said. S&P could lower the ratings over the next 12 months if it thought that the rapid accumulation of government external debt in recent years would not moderate in line with its projections, for instance, because ongoing investment needs lead to higher than expected fiscal or external deficits. We could also lower the ratings if dollarization levels in the economy significantly increase despite recent reforms, or if we observe increasing weakness in key state-owned enterprises, leading to the realization of contingent liabilities on the government's balance sheet, it added. Uzbekistan's increased integration with the global economy and government SOE reforms could support the ratings if they result in increased economic growth potential and SOE financial resiliency. Further diversification of the government's revenue base or the composition of exports would also support the ratings. The negative outlook reflects our view that the accumulation of external and fiscal debt might not moderate through 2023. Up until now, Uzbekistan has been using the significant flexibility provided by the very strong fiscal and external asset positions it began with in 2018. In our view, the room for significant further external debt accumulation at the current rating level has narrowed. This follows the sharp increase in government external debt in recent years related to the government's plans to improve infrastructure and modernize the economy. We also expect external debt to increase over the near term because of COVID-19 related spending. However, we expect a more selective approach to project implementation over through 2023, which should see the increase in gross external debt moderate. Whether the economic benefits from the infrastructure investments will be sufficient to mitigate the deterioration of the fiscal and external balance sheets remains uncertain, and more likely we will materialize beyond 2023, S&P Global Ratings states. Uzbekistan's external position remains relatively strong compared with the similarly rated peers. The government's net debt burden is low and supports the ratings. The agency expects government debt net of liquid assets will climb to 8% of GDP by year-end 2020, from a net asset position of 9% of GDP at year-end 2018.
Uzbekistan expects its gas output to total around 60 billion cubic meters in both 2020 and 2021, despite the coronavirus pandemic hitting output volumes earlier this year, Deputy Energy Minister Begzod Narmatov told S&P Global Platts. At the start of this year, ministry officials said that Uzbekistan expected to increase gas output slightly to 60.8 billion cubic meters in 2020 and produce the same volumes in 2021. In 2019, it produced 60.7 billion cubic meters.
Deputy Energy Minister said this year the output will be slightly less and the next year it will be slightly more. Due to the pandemic, demand for shipments to the east fell and Lukoil had to cut its output temporarily for a few months to the minimum. Uzbekistan's shipments to China have not yet fully recovered to pre-pandemic volumes. Before the pandemic, the country was shipping more than 20 million cubic meters per day. During the pandemic, this was 4 times less. That's from March to August. From August, it gradually started to increase, but the previous level hasn't been reached so far. China requested a cut in supplies, which was shared proportionally between Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, and Uzbekistan. The 3 Central Asian countries ship gas to China via the Central Asia-China gas pipeline network, which has a design capacity of 55 billion cubic meters per year. By 2025, Uzbekistan plans to stop exporting natural gas entirely, processing it instead into polymer products for export. This includes the Uzbekistan GTL project in southern Uzbekistan. The plant was slated for launch at the end of this year, but this has been put back due to the impact of the coronavirus pandemic on construction.
Uzbekistan has scored 63 points and placed 44th in the world and first in Central Asia in the Open Data Inventory rating. According to the State Statistics Committee, Uzbekistan became one of the 2 countries that showed the greatest growth in this rating, rising to 125 positions. In 2018, the country was ranked 169th in the world.
Kazakhstan was placed 53rd, Kyrgyzstan 95th, Tajikistan 129th, Afghanistan 165th. Turkmenistan closes the list being placed 187th. On April 9, 2019, the president of Uzbekistan adopted a decree on additional measures to ensure the openness and transparency of public administration, as well as to increase the statistical potential of the country, which served as the basis for the development of open data in the country. ODIN assesses the coverage and openness of official statistics to identify gaps, promote open data policies, improve access, and encourage dialogue between national statistical offices and data users. ODIN 2020-21 covers 187 countries.
The Uzbek government has tightened the law on nature. Thus, an illegal tree cutter may be penalized up to $300 or sent to jail for up to 3 years.
An arsonist may face fines between $100 and $200, a compulsory community service up to 240 hours, which can be easily changed to 1 year of imprisonment. The amount of the fine for repeated illegal logging, damage, destruction of trees, shrubs, other plants, and young growth has been increased. An individual offender will have to pay up to $300, and a corporate body will have to shell out $600 with the forfeiture of the tools.
Minister of Public Education of Uzbekistan Sherzod Shermatov urged parents and teachers to use all available opportunities for learning foreign languages. The minister on his Telegram account wrote that the biggest problem when learning English at a young age was finding a native speaker.
When we were young, it was quite difficult for us to find the tape, and we were very happy once we found it. Despite all these difficulties, without the help of a tutor, we were able to pass the TOEFL and found an opportunity to study in the USA, Shermatov said. According to the minister, today's youth have enough opportunities to learn the language. However, they do not use these opportunities enough. The ministry has organized the broadcast of cartoons in English prepared by American partners, together with UNODC. In addition, a number of teachers from the United States are expected to arrive in Uzbekistan in January to conduct lessons for all grades.
The Agency for the Development of the Pharmaceutical Industry of Uzbekistan has proposed to produce Russian vaccines against coronavirus. The project, worth $53 million, is suggested to be constructed on the territory of the Tashkent Pharma Park pharmaceutical cluster. Sardor Kariev, director of the Agency for the Development of the Pharmaceutical Industry, has initiated the talks.
The construction of Tashkent Pharma Park kicked off at the end of January 2020. Pharmaceutical Technical University, with its own infrastructure and industrial zone, will be created on the territory of the cluster. The university will include research centers and laboratories, a vivarium, a symposium center with a hotel, and more. Within 4 years, a project worth $191 million is to be implemented as part of a broad plan. As it has been proposed, the goal is to manufacture immunobiological drugs, including Russian vaccine, to prevent coronavirus transmission. Currently, the share of imports of immunobiological vaccines is 92%.
Sources say the United States is getting ready to slap at least a dozen Chinese officials with a fresh round of sanctions, keeping up pressure on China during President Donald Trump's final weeks in office. The sources say it's a response to Beijing disqualifying elected opposition politicians in Hong Kong last month. Now, up to 14 people will be targeted with asset freezes and financial sanctions in both mainland China and Hong Kong. Those affected are set to include members of China's Communist Party, as well as officials from China's parliament. The White House and State Department did not immediately respond to requests for comment. Last month, 4 opposition members of Hong Kong's legislature were expelled after China's parliament gave city authorities new powers to curb dissent, a move that triggered mass resignations by pro-democracy lawmakers. It also prompted countries including Australia, New Zealand, Canada and Britain to accuse Beijing of further undermining democracy and human rights in the city. Washington has already sanctioned Hong Kong's chief executive Carrie Lam, as well as the current and former police chiefs. President-elect Joe Biden has promised to take a tougher line on China with regards to human rights, so his response to the crackdown in Hong Kong could be an early test of that resolve.
U.S. President-elect Joe Biden has chosen his defense secretary, retired General Lloyd Austin. That's according to a person familiar with the decision on Monday. Austin served under former President Barack Obama, overseeing forces in the Middle East as head of the U.S. Central Command. He would also be the first black person to run the Pentagon. The news was first reported by Politico. Austin is a surprise pick over Michelle Flournoy. She was a Pentagon policy chief under Obama, and many saw her as a leading contender for the job. She would also have been the first female Secretary of Defense. Austin's nomination could draw fire from progressive groups given his role on the board of a number of companies, including weapons maker Raytheon Technologies. And he would be the second Pentagon chief in 4 years to require a congressional waiver, since it has been less than 7 years required of the position since he served in the military. Biden's first major challenge, however, will be the global health crisis. He's already nominated key members of his health team, including California Attorney General Javier Becerra as head of Health and Human Services. And Biden's asked Dr. Anthony Fauci, the nation's top infectious disease expert, to stay on as a chief medical advisor.
On Sunday, Britain's top Brexit negotiator was trying to sound positive.
We're going to be working very hard to try and get a deal.
But David Frost knows he's got a job on his hands. As talks resumed in Brussels on Monday, agreement still looked far from certain. There's still little sign of progress on the key sticking points: fishing rights in UK waters, how to ensure fair competition, and a mechanism for solving future disputes. Irish Prime Minister Micheál Martin said the chances of a deal are 50-50. Investment bank JP Morgan said its odds of a no-deal exit had risen from 20% to 1/3. On Monday, EU chief negotiator Michel Barnier sounded rather downbeat about prospects, according to one diplomat. Later in the day, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen will review the state of play. Failure to agree a deal will clog borders, upset financial markets, and disrupt supply chains across Europe. And with lawmakers on both sides needing to ratify any agreement, time really is running out. The mounting uncertainty is taking a toll on the pound. Sterling tumbled as much as 1.4% against the dollar early Monday morning.
Front of many minds is the economy.
Okay.
The West African economic powerhouse this year suffered its first quarterly economic contraction in nearly 4 decades. And the two main candidates for the presidency are both offering a recovery. Incumbent President Nana Akufo-Addo is promising to push ahead with a $17 billion program to boost jobs.
The second term of Akufo-Addo is going to bring the house of prosperity, the house of progress, the house of development, the house of employment to our country.
His main challenger, former President John Mahama, has a $10 billion infrastructure program at the heart of his campaign.
We vote to elect a president and a government who can fix and improve the economy so we can profit from our businesses and take care of our families.
Last year, Ghana emerged from a 3-year lending program with the International Monetary Fund, only for a world of lockdowns to knock demands for its key exports, oil and cocoa. There are 12 presidential candidates on the ballot, but most voters are expected to be chosen between Akufo-Addo and Mahama. The race, in which a parliament will also be elected, is expected to be tied. Commentators suggest Akufo-Addo may have a slight lead based on his performance in a tumultuous year in which his administration provided free water and subsidized electricity to households.
With their burnt noses and singed paws, the confronting images of injured koalas have become an enduring sight of what Australia's government has called the Black Summer, the bushfires at the beginning of 2020. And now the magnitude of the crisis is forming more fully. The World Wildlife Fund is estimating that more than 60,000 koalas were killed, injured or displaced in the blazes. For perspective, there's only about 330,000 in the country as of 4 years ago, but continual bushfires each year were thought to have already reduced that number. WWF's Australia CEO, Dermot O'Gorman.
Now, for a species that was already heavily impacted, this is a really disturbing number and one that we're deeply concerned about. These numbers are really off the charts, and they drive home the unprecedented nature of the Australian bushfires that really require a massive response.
Last summer's bushfires also killed 33 people and razed over 59 million acres across the country. Even before the fires, koala habitats had been in rapid decline due to land clearing for agriculture, urban development, mining and forestry. But the WWF says that not all hope is lost.
We've been humbled by the reaction from the Australian public and from our supporters to Regenerate Australia, and we are determined going into 2021 to be able to make it a year in which we turn round the plight of Australian wildlife and regenerate Australia for current and future generations.
To do so, the WWF aims to double the number of koalas in eastern Australia by 2050. The plan includes a trial of drones to drop seeds of eucalyptus trees, which provide both food and shelter for koalas, and the establishment of a fund to encourage landowners to create koala safe havens.
Twitter has released data of the most shared events on its platform this year. At the top is the final tweet from the account of the Black Panther star, Chadwick Boseman, who died in August from colon cancer. The message announcing his death was the most shared worldwide on Twitter in 2020 and received the most likes ever at 7.5 million. Former US President Barack Obama's tribute to Kobe Bryant as a legend on the court after the death of the basketball player in a helicopter crash in January was second among likes and retweets. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump, himself a prolific Twitter user, was the person most tweeted about on the platform, followed by his Democratic rival and President-elect Joe Biden. George Floyd, the black man whose death in America under the knee of a white police officer sparked worldwide protests against racism, was the third most tweeted about person, while the hashtag Black Lives Matter was the second most popular after COVID-19. For a fourth straight year, the K-pop group BTS were the most tweeted about musicians in the United States, a sign of the boy band's successes in US music charts and award shows.
Airbnb has plans to boost the target price range for its initial public offering to a price between $56 to $60 per share. That's according to a person familiar with the matter on Sunday, speaking on anonymity as the plans are private. The US home rental company has previously set its IPO at about $44 and $50 apiece. At the upper end of the range, this would mean Airbnb would sell over $3 billion in stock and have a fully diluted valuation, which includes securities such as options and restricted stock units of over $41 billion. This is well above the $18 billion Airbnb was worth in April in a private fundraising round in the early weeks of the coronavirus pandemic. Airbnb's stock market debut, slated for December 10th on Nasdaq, will be one of the largest and most anticipated US listings of 2020. The source added that Airbnb would alert investors of the new IPO range in a public filing on Monday.
And this was our last report. Thank you for watching and goodbye.